Oh goody, it's our first casualty of this being a subscription service. So, yes, this is the very first time that a retro game is going to be removed from the Nintendo Switch Online retro catalog. And it just happens to kind of be like a meddling, soccer game. Even though the quality of a game doesn't necessarily determine its worthiness of being preserved, all media should be preserved. But yeah, this is really the first for Nintendo Switch Online ever since it was introduced in September of 2018. Every game that's been added to the service has still been a part of the service to this day. So this is the first time that any of these retro games have been removed from one of these retro catalogs for Switch Online, which in a sense, for me at least, kind of sullies this like weird sort of sanctity that Switch Online has had in this world of subscription services, where you hear of all these other services where things are constantly being added and then removed. But then here you have Switch Online that's just an ever-growing catalog that has never had anything removed until now. In a sense, it's almost felt like OG Netflix, where it seemed like it just had everything and everyone loved it, even though not everyone has loved Switch Online. But just like in the sense that it's been this ever-growing catalog that hasn't been diminished or dwindled until now. And at this point, this does now set the precedent that at any time, for any reason, any game could theoretically leave Switch Online. Even though PR-wise, like, it would just be not a good idea for Nintendo to remove one of their first-party games from Switch Online, like A Link to the Past, for example. But again, this does now set the precedent that, you know, games like GoldenEye could leave the service. And that felt like such a big deal when it originally was added to the service, because it's like, oh, this is the first time that it's being added to any sort of Nintendo retro digital catalog. And of course, it's when it's a subscription service that can now have stuff be taken away from the user. And it also kind of like diminishes my excitement for this transition from Switch 1 to Switch 2, likely being the first time that a Nintendo system's retro digital catalog being essentially transferred right over, because you think about it, Switch 2 is going to be backwards compatible with both physical and digital Nintendo Switch 1 titles. And also, Nintendo Switch Online will still be a thing on Switch 2. We don't know exactly in what capacity, but it does lead you to believe that all of these, you know, retro games that have been added to the service over time will just carry right on over. So when I made those connections, I was really excited that it's like, oh, we're not gonna lose any of these. They're just gonna carry right on over onto the new system. Again, it's not this specific game that I'm, like, distraught about losing. It's just, again, the precedent that this now sets, that anything could be pulled from the service whenever, for whatever reason. Despite that, I still do kind of stand by the thought that Switch Online is... I think it's still a better setup than Virtual Console. Just because, for someone like myself, I run an 8-person family plan for the expansion pack. That is $10 per person per year. For subscription services, that is quite literally highway robbery, except we're the ones robbing Nintendo. And for those $10 per year, you have like a couple hundred retro games just all at once. And so the service is kind of set up to be like, you dabble with one thing for a while, you dabble with another thing. I think it's way better in terms of discoverability of finding something that you might not have played before if everything was set up like Virtual Console, where you had to individually buy each game for a couple bucks each. But then again, games being pulled from a subscription service is why, at least in part, people have wanted Virtual Console back. And in that regard, I hope Switch 2 has both. I want them to still carry over Switch Online how it currently is, but then still give us the option to purchase games individually, like the Virtual Console. And once you make that purchase, regardless if you have an active Switch Online membership or not, you would still have access to those games that you purchased individually. But you could still have an active online membership if you wanted to dabble with stuff like Super Soccer and Smash Tennis and Twin Bee and Operation Logic Bomb and Wild Guns and whatever the fuck this is. Natsume Championship Wrestling. Cool. I do think that both on one system would just appease everybody and would stop people from just complaining. All that being said, I was already thinking about this possibility some time ago. It was around like a year or so after N64 was added to Switch Online. It was just starting to feel like, okay, at some point, this feels like it's gotta give in some way with how much stuff they're adding to the retro catalogs. Especially with how a few days before I'm literally recording this video, they're still adding new stuff. I've actually really wanted to play through Donkey Kong 94 ever since I 100%ed the Mario vs. Donkey Kong remake on the Switch. I'm pretty sure this is like a prequel of sorts to that Game Boy Advance game. Not this one. But anyways, I was still thinking about the possibility of our games on Switch Online going to stay on Switch Online. And also, what about the save data of each one of these games? How far into the future will that be transferable to whatever new systems? And so if you happen to watch the last video that I made like 6 months ago, you already know my answer. Yeah, so part of my reason for getting the Steam Deck has been the thought that over time I can build it out to be the singular device that I play retro games on. Like, for one, it has a similar form factor and everything to the Switch. It's portable, you can play it in, its handheld mode like this, or you can dock it to a TV and use an external controller. But it also has the upsides of essentially being a, this is just a computer. Whatever game ROMs that I put on here, stay on here. And whatever save data that I end up generating with the games that I play, I can move that to whatever devices I want to in the future. And this isn't just limited to Nintendo systems. You can also do PlayStation stuff as well. One of the games that I've been playing on the Steam Deck the most has actually been Little Big Planet PSP. I played the original so much back in the day on my older brother's PlayStation. I know that the Steam Deck can actually run some PS3 games. I just haven't set up that game specifically on here, even though I know it can run. But yeah, like, I have genuinely been playing Little Big Planet PSP. I think this is actually like the final world. And also, fun fact, because this is being emulated, once you load into a level, you can fast forward the loading screen and then just start playing. Like, you saw how fast fast forwarding through the loading screen was. This is how it is normally. Yeah, suffice it to say, I got the Steam Deck because I was worried about sometime in the future games maybe leaving Switch Online just because, like, how are they going to be able to actually keep all of those on the service? But also, going the route of emulation, I still believe is the only way that people can feasibly play retro games these days. Asterisk. Even though lots of people have still praised Virtual Console, it's not immune from delisting. Case in point, the original Tetris was delisted from the Nintendo 3DS Virtual Console. And additionally, the Donkey Kong Country games on the Wii Virtual Console were also delisted for, I think, like several years. So yeah, even if Nintendo were to actually bring back more or less the Virtual Console to Switch 2, like, guys, it's not gonna be infallible from delisting. It will still happen for some games, whether you like it or not. I just now noticed that it's not showing the preview of the next shape. I don't know if that's indicative of, like, the game mode that I'm playing on or what. But also, whatever hypothetical Virtual Console will never provide the entire catalog for a system. It just won't, because there's going to be random-ass games that are going to have random-ass licensing conflicts that will prevent them from ever showing up again. That's why I'm still surprised that GoldenEye is on Switch Online right now. Because I think, like, technically right now it's owned by Amazon or something. I still don't know how the licensing was figured out for that, but we'll see how long that lasts. Not to mention that, going the route of emulation, you completely bypass the retro game economy. Because let's be honest, you're not getting these ROMs from original hardware, or at least most people aren't. Although when I modded my 3DS, I did dump all of the physical DS games that I have, so although, I think that does bring up probably the biggest downside to setting up emulate. I did not mean to touch the button. Oh, I just wanted to stay on the file screen. Yes, I know this game is fiction. I played the Steam version because I don't actually like the DS version. Although I do think that brings up the biggest downside to emulation, is that it's basically like a shitty IQ test to acquire ROMs, with how you have to navigate potentially, like, sketchy websites trying to figure out which is the download button, and even, like, the better ROM sites don't have everything. I imagine it's because the Delta emulator on iOS got so popular in 2024 that companies like Nintendo were just like, yeah, no, we're gonna strike you down, or at least force you to remove our games from your service. But honestly, if you're someone that is going to buy a Steam Deck or has bought a Steam Deck, you're probably a very specific subsect of person who already knows how to properly and safely acquire game ROMs, let's be honest here. And it's probably well worth it to get into emulation because, yeah, physical games and game hardware will eventually deteriorate. There is some talk online about, like, disk rot and bit rot, and sure, it's probably not as prevalent right now, but it could happen at some point in the future. It's probably just as unpredictable as a company pulling a game from a subscription service. Because if you have everything on one device, you can set up some sort of routine or whatever system to make frequent backups of all of the ROMs and save data that you have. Ideally, you should keep to the 3-2-1 rule, 3 total copies on 2 different mediums, and 1 of those backups is off-site. Off-site meaning out of your house, like maybe in the closet of a trusted friend's house or whatever. Because again, as long as you make those frequent backups, those ROMs and those save data will never die. Not to mention the space that you save by going the way of emulation. I probably have a couple hundred games total here just on the Steam Deck of, like, you know, retro titles. If I had all of these physically, I don't know how the hell I would store them. At least with this, it's just on one device, and it doesn't take up any more physical space than whatever devices and whatever hard drives you have that data on. Anywho, I think I've pretty much made my point. Emulation is the way to go for retro gaming, in terms of space, economics, and longevity. I think I'm gonna go play more Little Big Planet PSP. Goodbye.